Another space that we mentioned just a bit here was cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is fascinating because just some top line statistics, 160 million emails are being sent every minute. MIT said last year that the average organization is triggering 3.2 billion potential cybersecurity events a month, but only 31 of them are actual threats. So there's a lot of signal going on out there and deciphering the noise from that. But cybersecurity has been an issue that's been consolidating, right? I mean, you're starting to see some really, really big vendors out there, Fortinet, Checkpoint, you know, even like the FireEyes of the world. I've tried to get bigger and get more information and monitor more things to protect companies. But we're also kind of seeing a shift in the type of protection itself, right? So next generation firewalls versus now that everything's moving to the cloud, more cloud-based platforms. One company that I know that you're a big fan of, Matthew, that is maybe not considered specifically a cybersecurity company, but they are addressing these kinds of issues is Octa. Can you talk a little bit about Octa and what it is that you really are intrigued about with this company?
Yeah, let me back up one thing. Sure. I'm very intrigued by this whole cybersecurity wave. You know, there's some core, as you mentioned at the top, every company is a technology company now. Okay, so you've got a workforce, you've got devices, you've got laptops, you've got phones or tablets out in the field. So you have to maintain all that infrastructure. So every company is now a tech company. It's not just the software companies anymore. And so there is a lot of products being built all around, and this is where I'm most interested as an investor because they cross-apply to so many different, I mean, really every enterprise. Every enterprise needs cybersecurity. Every enterprise needs monitoring of some kind. And so cybersecurity in particular is a very interesting one, and I try to find the companies that are honed into a very specific purpose and task. And then, of course, with all the global pandemic going on right now, workforce is becoming more and more scattered, and so this is becoming more and more critical. And so it happens to, you know, be a trending situation with multiple variables right now. But the move to the cloud was accelerating it. The app economy was accelerating it. Remote workforce was accelerating it. And now the pandemic is making it absolutely critical. So as far as investments go, it's a very interesting space to be in. But as you said, there's a lot of players. There's a lot of competition. And so again, I look for the execution. But the reason I like these cloud native providers versus the behemoths, I'll call them, that may have been providing an on-premise firewall and they're trying to pivot into the cloud, they're playing catch up because these cloud native ones have some specific strengths. One of which is that they have vision over their entire customer base at once. So they can see their entire network of all their customers at once. So a company like Octa and CrowdStrike has an inherent advantage because they are looking at millions of data points, whereas any company trying to provide an on-premise secure solution is only looking at their data, not the rest. So I kind of call that as looking at your own island of data. And when you're looking at an island of data, you're trying to solve only your cybersecurity needs and not keeping the big picture, or you have no vision into the big picture. Whether the neighboring company is getting hacked or other people in your data center, or, you know, what you're constantly playing a reactive game that way. So these new wave of cybersecurity SaaS providers have an inherent advantage. They can see the entirety of their entire customer base at once. Because of that, they also, and it's because it's a cloud solution and a SaaS provider, they can react immediately. And so if they identify a threat, they can block that threat across their entire customer base instantly. And if you're dealing with some kind of on-premise solution or something that needs to be updated very frequently with new signatures of threats, that they can't keep up. They're always going to be reactive, and these new solutions can be a lot more proactive this way. So a very interesting paradigm that's emerged in cloud security or in cybersecurity because of the cloud. And as we're seeing now, another important one is that they can scale immediately. You know, if CrowdStrike has to double or triple their customers in response to today's changing world, they can do that instantly. So very exciting all around in this space. And I'm interested in a couple of different names. The first one you said is Octa. They are an identity provider. And so they are everything to do with authentication, authorization, and single sign-on. And so they provide an immediate place all your workforce can go to log in once and have access to all the other SaaS tooling that is provided. And so they're very interesting and one of my most exciting companies that I own, because they're on so many different trends right now. They're in the cloud trend and app economy trend. But as more and more SaaS providers show up, and as tooling continues to expand from here, Octa only benefits from here, because all of those will integrate into Octa's integration network, and they will provide capabilities for all the workforce to log into those services. So they only continue to grow under this environment. But Octa also has a second half, which is not only do they provide workforce authentication services, they provide customer authentication services. So they also live in that space that Mongo and Elastic live in. They are a developer tool, so that if you are a software company and have your own, you're creating your own SaaS platform or your own mobile app, they can provide the user authentication. And you don't have to dedicate resources to figuring out cybersecurity and have to maintain all those incredibly high standards of cybersecurity. You can offload all of that to Octa. They've got the experts. You don't need to maintain that. You can focus on your core expertise. I'm going to build this software that does this thing, not how are my users going to access it. So incredibly strong company and incredibly sticky company. They are deeply embedded in someone like Adobe and Adobe Cloud. Every user of Adobe Cloud is an Octa, goes through an Octa interface in order for authentication.
And Matthew, if I might also add to that too, you mentioned that, Octa is very penetrated already at the workforce level. They're already very penetrated at the customer level, doing business with those. But I've heard you mention an even more intriguing idea too, which is the consumer level, right? So like we have an identity that we need to protect ourselves as well, for whether it's online voting, whether it's, healthcare, now going to the cloud and being more out there. Do you think there's an opportunity for Octa to expand even farther into a consumer platform?
Yes. So they've created the platform. The approach is that it is an enterprise facing approach with workforce or customers. But yes, they could clearly pivot that platform in other directions. And it's just interesting that they, at Octane 20, they were greatly discussing consumer facing. And you see it emerging already. DocuSign is another SaaS provider company, and they're creating something called Agreement Cloud. That's exactly where a consumer-facing identity management system that Octa could tie into that, and so that you're sure you're signing a contract with someone and it's that person. That's really where Octa could start playing very easily. Mm-hmm. So optionality. There's so many different directions they could go from here.
Yeah,
even, but they're strong as a company right now. So very exciting company.
And CrowdStrike too. I believe I heard you mention CrowdStrike too. As I understand it, the endpoint protection, right? There's a whole lot more devices out there. CrowdStrike, at least the last numbers I looked at, was growing revenue, at least subscription revenue, 90% a year, and their free cash flow margin is already at 34%. That's incredible for an investor like me to see something like that. What's the special sauce with CrowdStrike? What is it something about this company that you really like?
It all goes back to what I was saying about the strength of the cloud. So CrowdStrike's mantra is that we're crowdsourced security. And that goes back to what I was saying at the beginning. Customers are no longer their own island. Anything that's occurring, any attack that's occurring across the CrowdStrike network can be seen by CrowdStrike and acted upon. So it could be preventing an attack to thousands of customers at once with a simple fix or a simple response. And so it's that crowdsourced knowledge that's really their strength, but also the scale they immediately get. And so they were having phenomenal performance. It's one of my top holdings. Going into the last earnings, they are having phenomenal performance, knocking it out of the park, and having complete tailwinds. And then enter the pandemic, where you have the workforce scattering further. They become more critical. And so cybersecurity, there's a lot of different angles to cybersecurity. Octa was identity. Octa is all about identifying you're the person who you are. And once that identity is established, then you can have access to all the tooling and internal sites or whatever's hooked up through the Octa network. However, you also need to protect your network traffic. And so this is the traffic from my device to somewhere else. So Octa partially does that. They control your authentication and authorization to use things, but they're not protecting the traffic as it goes from my device to a server. And then you need to protect the devices themselves. And that's where CrowdStrike comes into play. And so I've actually got companies across all those areas of cybersecurity I'm interested in. Octa for identity, CrowdStrike for endpoint protection, and Zscaler for network traffic, for the network traffic between devices. So with CrowdStrike, it's an agent that gets installed on your devices. This could be laptops. This could be servers, whether on-premise or in the cloud. This could be services that are running somewhere in the cloud. Your mobile devices scattered across your workforce. And so this is protecting attacks to that device. It's trying to, the old method was, I'm going to install an antivirus agent and malware detector. But now it's so much more. And it's not just this, again, you're not your own island. The old method was that I had Norton antivirus on my laptop, and if it saw something, it would try to respond to it, but it would automatically download updates every so often to be able to recognize those signatures. CrowdStrike can be way more proactive in what they're looking for and block some content that they see on any device across their entire network. They can block that all at once. And so CrowdStrike is all about endpoint protection. And then you get into something like Zscaler, where they're all about the traffic. And you start seeing partnerships, including between those two companies. CrowdStrike and Zscaler are working together in a partnership to protect both at once. So you can get both of those services and they bundle together and interoperate together, where it's almost giving you end-to-end protection. I'm protected in the traffic that's going to a device. The device itself is protected, and then I'm protected with the outgoing traffic from that same device. So interesting combinations are starting to happen from all these disparate companies.